Hello, my name is Sophia Warringer and I am the Deputy Policy Director at the Centre for Social Justice. I'm going to go through today the findings of our report, A United Nation. The United Nation is the result of the Social Justice Commission's inquiry into the state of poverty and disadvantage across the UK. It follows from the first part of the Commission's research published last year, Two Nations. For this research, we have gone all over the country, polled thousands of people, spoken to hundreds of charities, and heard from the most left behind communities what was really going on. As you can see from these two graphs, there is a growing gap between the most deprived and left behind communities and the general population. For the most deprived communities, their lives are marked by poor mental and physical health, family breakdown, educational failure, dependency on welfare, and debt and drug addiction. The report published today, A United Nations, sets out the solutions that we think will solve some of the biggest issues facing these communities. The first thing that a United Nations sets out to solve is how to make work pay. The number of economically inactive people has jumped 400,000 over the past year, and nearly 3 million of the working age population are out of work sick for long-term sickness. Despite research by the CSJ, which shows that 700,000 of this cohort, if given the right support, would like to work. Failure to act in this regard will see the sickness benefit bill soar by over 10 billion in the next 5 years. Our solution is to not spend any more money, but to spend the money that we already have better, to devolve it away from central government, which doesn't know the local need or the local job market, and move it to councils and mayors, which are better tailored to meet the needs of their local community. This means adult education budget and employment support budget amounting to 6 billion is taken away from Whitehall and to the town councils and mayors and local councils, which will be able to deliver it the most impactfully. In this chapter on making work pay, we also have 6 other recommendations that are practical, workable solutions. The second aspect on how to create safe streets taps into a very politically salient issue of the feeling of the general public that crime is a big issue in their community, and also the overcrowded prison service, which is nearly at full capacity. We propose, therefore, a new sentence to move people who are not needed to be in prison away from being sentenced in prison and being sentenced in robust community sentences instead. We are calling this the Intensive Control and Rehabilitation Order, and we believe this new sentence will not only relieve prison pressures, but also provide better outcomes for people. Those on this sentence will have mandatory conditions, which means that they will be electronically tagged, they will be tracked wherever they go. They may have to engage in particular rehabilitative services such as drug and alcohol support, but it means that they can continue where appropriate their caring responsibilities, their work responsibilities, and continue the housing tenure that they were in. This means that there's less disruption to their lives and more chance of reducing reoffending. As well as this proposal for a new sentence, we have 10 other recommendations that we believe will create safe streets. The third policy section that we have put forward solutions for is how to build stable communities. Time and time again in our research, we heard that small charities and social enterprises were the backbone of their communities, and they really came into their own during the pandemic. While lots of the big charities stayed behind desks, they were the ones out on the front line, engaging and supporting their communities. In fact, CSJ analysis has shown that 85% of charitable income goes to just 4% of charities, meaning that these small but life-giving and life-bringing and social enterprises and charities are being squeezed out of the market. We are calling for a whole new way to approach integrating the offer that the third sector can bring to improving services for people. We want to see certainty over partnerships between statutory and voluntary services so that charities can plan for the future and provide programmes for the long term. We want to see integration between these services, a seat at the table for charity leaders so they can express the concerns of the community that they represent and know better than anyone. And finally, we want visibility, so data collection and sharing between these different stakeholders to ensure that the very best services are getting to the people that need it the most. In this chapter, we also have 8 other recommendations on how to build stable communities. The fourth policy solution that we are looking into is how to support fragile families. Despite a very high and rising bill to the taxpayer for childcare, the current system is increasing in price and does not seem to be delivering what families want. Our own polling has shown that parents, particularly of younger children, would like to spend more, not less time with their children, and cite finances as the main barrier to being able to do so. We are concerned that the current childcare plan is going to increase costs to the taxpayer without considering what is best for the family and what is best in interest of the child. But there is an opportunity to increase outcomes, increase parental choice, and tackle child poverty all in one go. We propose a new childcare solution called Family Credit. This would roll together 3 different prongs to give parents the flexibility and choice they need, particularly in those early years. The 3 prongs will be moving the childcare subsidy into a cash entitlement, so parents can not just redeem it from a formal childcare setting, but also use it for childminders or family members or even themselves to care for their children. The second aspect is to front load child benefit into the foremost vulnerable years of a child's life, which is between 0 and 4. This is when child poverty is most acute and families struggle the most. So moving that money into those early years will relieve pressure at that crucial point. And finally, we believe that households should be able to work as a team in their taxation. So allowing 100% transferable tax allowance between couples to enable them to do that. In this chapter, we also have 8 other recommendations on how to support fragile families. The final chapter looks at how to champion the lost generation. We know that the pandemic is still feeling very recent for most of our youngest generation, and this is being seen in the soaring mental health crisis, as you can see in the first graph, and also educational disadvantage and attainment, which is still catching up. Our research has shown that if trends continue as they are, over a quarter of all children will have a mental health condition by 2030. Alongside this, physical activity is plummeting, and less than a third of children do 30 minutes of exercise per day. The government should therefore commit to delivering 2 hours of additional extracurricular activity, particularly sport, every week as part of a wider package of 5 hours of extracurricular activity, which will extend the school day, giving the most disadvantaged children and a step up to catch up with their more affluent peers. The second thing that we think that we need to see to really turbocharge the offer for young people is to do a whole new way of delivering youth services. As you can see from the second graph, youth services run by the local authority have declined steadily in recent years. But there is a way to fund sustainably a new generation of youth services that is not dependent just on taxpayers' money, but brings together philanthropists and business leaders and local authority leaders to ensure that those services are protected for years to come. We are therefore calling for a National Youth Legacy Endowment to set up this fund separate from the whims of political departments that will endure into the future. In this chapter, we also have 12 other recommendations on how to champion the lost generation and particularly relieve some of the scars still felt by the pandemic. You can read our full report on the website, A United Nation, which sets out in detail these 50 policy recommendations, which we believe are implementable within this Parliament, many of them cost neutral, many more cost minimal, that will really make a big difference to the most disadvantaged.